Hello, friends. It's Miss Shaw here, and today we're going to go over proteins. I think we are somewhat familiar with them as we talked about them in class before, but proteins help our body grow and they help us nourish and build our big, strong muscles, and they just help us with our everyday life as humans. So, we're going to go over proteins, what are proteins, how they function, what their structure is, things like that. If you have any questions, just feel free to email me as well. So, what are proteins? So, proteins are found in our cells, so within our body, and they are different shapes, sizes, and there are many types. Just like all cells, there are different sizes, shapes, everything, and there's so many of them. But proteins also have a specific job to do, whether it be for our diet, our neurons, they trigger our nervous system, things like that. Um, they're Hey friends, it is Miss Shaw here. I hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Today we are going to talk about proteins for today's science lesson. So just to jump right in, we're going to talk about proteins, their structure, their function, what they can look like in our bodies, things like that. So what are proteins? So proteins are found in our cells, so within our body. They, just like any other cells, they have different shapes, sizes, and there are many types, which we will get into later as well. Now, they do have a specific job. Sometimes, I have examples on the side, but, they help our body grow, they help our nervous system, they help us get enough sleep, things like that. And we'll talk more about later, so it's not too complex for you guys. And they are also built upon amino acids. We'll talk about that later, but I just want you to keep in mind the term amino acids. So common examples are enzymes. What enzymes do? They help speed up reactions, things like that. And then you have hormones, like I said earlier, they're going to help with our growth and development of our bodies. Insulin, if you know maybe a family member is diabetic, insulin helps produce just help our sugars in our body mostly, and just to keep our blood sugar down and everything like that. Um, and you also have antibodies. So if you say you got the flu or something, our antibodies are going to attack those viruses and the bacteria that's foreign in our body that we're not used to. Okay, so now this is important. Like I said about the amino acids, this is where the amino acids come in play, and that's with their structure and their forms. So there are four stages that we're going to talk about. Now the fourth one, as you can see right here, this one, the proteins can go through this cycle, but sometimes it's very rare. But they at least have to go through one, two, three of these cycles, at least the proteins have to. So, to understand their structure, let's just look at the peptides, okay? So, the primary structure is going to look like this. It has peptide bonds. So that's where you see peptides at. So you have your amino acids, like I said, there's just different acids that are built, and they connect to the peptide bonds. There's usually a line right here to, let you know that they are built upon each other. And those bonds are going to be peptide, of course. That's the primary structure. The secondary, they're going to have hydrogen bonds. Okay, and so these can look kind of like a chain. It's very like a 3D chain almost. And then it's going to be like a plated sheet. Imagine like folding paper up, over and over again, and then you can open it up and it's just folded, So kind of think about the beta plated sheet, kind of like that. And then you have the tertiary. And so these are going to be it's going to be a lot of bonds in this one, more complex. And so you have ionic, it's going to have an ionic bond with it, hydrogen, and just the other ones that are just going to kind of connect with it. As you can see, You have your amino acids right here, and in between them are the peptide bonds. And so you have different kinds, so maybe a hydrogen bond. It's just differently how they're connected. You have the ionic, they're distanced more, and they're just the line's gonna look like that connecting them, things like that. And then you have the quaternary. Oh, sorry, friends. You have the quaternary, and that's just gonna have the same bonds as the third step. And they're kind of gonna look like these fun strings, colorful strings almost. But as you can see close up, they still have the amino acids and the peptide bonds um, with them. Now let's look at the protein's basic shape, the primary shape that we already talked about with the first step. So a protein's basic shape, you're going to have poly and mono. Now these are just the root word. So for monomers, you have mono. That's only going to be one. That's why we have these little circles that are all alone, and they just explain for, like one amino acid. And then poly means many. You have polymers. So one of these amino acids, they're all going to bind into many amino acids. And remember, you still have the peptide bonds holding together the polymers. Excuse me. And as we talked about for the primary structure, as you saw the structure, this is the same thing. But proteins have specific acids that connect them. So the poly, you're going to have many, and they're going to be like many peptides. They're going to be many more peptide bonds that are going to create this basic shape we see in proteins. So the amino acids and the bonds, of course. So, like I said earlier, they come in different shapes, sizes, structures, things like that. We're going to categorize amino acids. I keep mentioning that, but just to get um, down more with the term, we're going to talk about the essential amino acids. So, essential amino acids, you're going to get these things from food, whether it be from eating fish or meat or drinking milk, things like that. That's what's going to let us get protein in our body by eating. And you have the non-essential amino acids. So what these are doing, they're just proteins that our bodies produce alone. They don't have to drink milk. You don't have to drink milk or eat protein like meat and fish and stuff to get those. Our body just regulate those already in our body. And then you have the conditional amino acids. So these proteins are used when you are ill or stressed. So like I said, the antibodies example in the beginning of the slide, that's where the conditional amino acids will come into play. So we're going to look into the protein structure. I think this is really cool. So if you're ever in chemistry, you may be familiar with kind of this format, these elements and things. You'll see those in chemistry and things like that. But proteins, they have a central carbon and then excuse me, they have a central carbon and it connects to amino groups, this acid group, and then it's also going after you have all these formed. You have your amino group, and then you're going to go back to the center, and then there's going to be this acid group that's going to be added on as well, and then this all together, these two, is going to create a hydrogen atom, and then you're going to have the R group. Everything's just perfectly balanced, of course, on each side of the C, the carbon. And so here are some benefits of the protein. I think this is so beneficial because, um, proteins do help us daily, whether it be for better sleep or a balanced diet. Like I said earlier, it's going to help our muscles, our hormones, things like that. So it's going to help our muscles contract. Maybe we're cold, our muscles are contracting. Working out, our muscles are going to contract to work with our body as well, and the rest of the nerves and our skin and things like that. And it's also going to break down foods. That's so important with our metabolism because if we don't break down any foods, how are we just going to use the bathroom? Things like that. You have to really think, about the little things in our bodies because everything functions with each other. It's also going to build our body structure, our hormones, for example, like I mentioned. It's going to help our body structure, build our bones, our muscles, things like that. And also, most importantly, it's going to protect us from foreign pathogens. Um, for like COVID, the flu, things like that. They're all going to help us and attack. The proteins are going to attack those foreign germs and stuff. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me and I will be glad to walk you through the rest. And if you need help with any homework, of course. Thank you.